Good afternoon. My name is Ken Luber, and I'm a playwright and a novelist, and I have this play that I've just written and is going to be produced. I'll be the producer at Town Hall on August 22nd, the 23rd, and the 24th. Sisters in Love. We have a full cast, and it's a very exciting play. What I'd like to tell you now is a little bit about myself and how this play came about. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I graduated from a liberal arts college, Ripon College, and then I did graduate work at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. When I was at Ripon, I was invited to the University of Iowa, the writer workshop, and I spent a year there. But it all wound up uh, being, I really wanted to leave the United States to travel the world. And I saw a small ad in the Milwaukee Journal for selling books in England as a book manager of a company in England. So I applied, I got the job, but it wasn't in England. It was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it was the great books of the Western world and selling books. But it was during this time that I met other salesmen and got involved in their lives too. And some of them were just wonderful guys. In fact, most of them were wonderful guys. To be a salesman, you have to have a certain personality, something I must admit I didn't have. Uh, but they did for the most part, and they were terrific. But there was something a bit sleazy about them. You never really knew what they were saying, what was true, and what wasn't. But they were terrific salesmen. Now, as I said, by no means am I saying this about all the salesmen I worked with, not at all. But there was that personality that it was the first time I'd come and encountered it, and it intrigued me as a budding writer myself. So being with salesmen in Sisters in Love, one of the main characters is a quote-unquote salesman, Hirsch, and he becomes the central figure in the play. But in the meantime, in my own life, I wanted to travel. I'd gone to New York. I had been in the universities of Wisconsin and Iowa, and even in McGill University in Montreal. And I decided I had enough of the intellectual world. I wanted to do something with my hands, just get back to earth. And so I decided to go to Israel and work on a kibbutz, which is what I did. But before I did that, I flew back to Milwaukee to get clothes for the trip. And I did that on a weekend. And while I was packing my bag, ironically, I did get a phone call from Great Books of the Western World. And they did want me to become the manager in London. However, by that time, I had already bought my ticket. I was going on a ship to Israel, and I had set my mind on working with my hands. And so I did. And I lived on a kibbutz for many months in the fields, in the orchards. Mostly, actually, they have these huge ponds for fishing. And I did a lot of that. And I started reading an Indian writer who I had been first familiar with when I was still back in New York. And his name is Krishnamurti. And I wanted to meet him, or at least study with him. And I had the opportunity to do so, I thought. So I took a boat to Turkey. And from Turkey, I hitchhiked across. And I was in Iran and in the desert, hoping a truck would come by. And it just waited and waited. And finally, a bus came by. So I got on the bus. I took just, looked straight ahead, didn't want to look at anybody. And I sat down in the seat toward the back. And about 2 minutes later, a man came back and sat down in the empty seat beside me. And he was in a suit. And he reminded me a little of Charlie Chaplin, if you know what he looked like. And we talked. And I told him I was going to India. And he said he was going there too. So, okay. So he first of all, he spoke excellent English, even though with an accent. And he was a charming guy. And I liked being, traveling with him. So we did together. Because he was familiar with these countries, it was easier for me to maneuver around, even though I had no money. Then once he showed me his suitcase that he carried with him, and it was with currency, filled with currency. And he explained to me that the problem was it was currency that nobody in these countries wanted, so he couldn't transfer it. It was from Portugal. He had been back there and actually had served time in jail. So that was my next flim flam man. And as I said, he was just a charming guy. I mean, he was just fun, easy to be with, until in Pakistan, uh, I had an argument with him. Actually, I left him in a bazaar to buy some razor blades. And he looked all over for me. And he got mad at me for having not told him where I'd gone. And I, as a cocky young American, said, I can do what I wanna, I can go where I wanna. And that was the end of our relationship. I didn't see him again. I walked across the border from Pakistan into India, and I got rides to New Delhi. And in New Delhi, I was told where the youth hostel was. But in Israel, a young woman had wanted to travel with me to India. And I didn't want to travel with her. But she said that she was going to school at Cornell University back east in the United States. And they had an excellent hotel management school. And there she had met two guys from India, from the Claridge Hotel in New Delhi, that their father owned. So she said, I'll write a letter for you to the hotel, and maybe they'll be able to help you. And so she gave me the letter. I never read it. I had no idea what it said. But I did go to New Delhi, and I went to the youth hostel. And the woman told me all the kids are down by that campfire. So I went down there. I sat down. I looked across the fire, and there was Ishmael. And I felt very badly. So when they got done singing songs, I came up to him. We said hello to each other. And I said, Ishmael, I've got this letter. Maybe it could help you and me. So the next morning, we went to the Claridge Hotel in New Delhi. And I gave the bearer the letter that I had never looked at. It was sealed. And he took it to the offices somewhere. And all of a sudden, a guy came out extremely friendly, and he was one of the sons. And he invited us into his office, and we told him that we were going down to Madras. And he said, well, I can't give you a place here, but I will um, give you an apartment in town that my uncle has. And he never uses it. He uses it to invite people for card games. With a wink, I thought to myself, sure. But we did stay at the apartment. And it was there that we split ways. Uh, I found out that really Ishmael wanted to go to Japan because this was 1963. And in 64, the Tokyo Olympic Games were. And he was going to go because he had a friend and they were going to make fake tickets to sell. Well, that's a flim-flam man, as nice as he was. And I always felt he would defend my life at any moment. Still, he was what he was. And later in life, that gave me the idea, along with the book salesman, of creating this character, Hirsch, for Sisters in Love. In the meantime, I got a letter from the son at the hotel, and he gave me a letter to someone in Madras. So I went down, I hitchhiked and took a train down to Madras. I gave the letter to the man at the newspaper office, and he sent me to a place called Adyar, which is the home of the Theosophical Society, where he thought they would know more about the writer Krishnamurti. And I got to the home of Krishnamurti, and I was told that he now lives in Ojai, California. So that was my dream, and eventually I did take boats back and wound up in Long Beach, California. I called an old college friend, and I got a job writing material for showbiz. In the meantime, I'd met a girl, and a friendship developed, and she had heard of the American Film Institute. I had knew nothing about it, and I was more interested in writing plays and novels. But she took my play to someone and they had just started the AFI, and out of the blue, they called me. They invited me to come up and talk to them, which I did, and they accepted me. I hadn't even filled out an application, and I was one of the first 15 fellows among the rest of them who all had been to film school or had made films, and I was the loner, you might say. But I got my education in film, and I later went on to work in the film industry, and I right now have one film that's under option and a TV series that also is under option. So I made my way through that industry, but I've also been writing plays. I have two sisters, and although they're not quite like the Sisters in Love, growing up with them gave me a feeling for, living with two women and the women I eventually became friends with. So between those two things and Hirsch, the salesman type, I created the play Sisters in Love. It's a melodrama. It's at Town Hall, as I said. It's August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. There are 2 matinees, and I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. I hope you enjoy it a lot. The actors are putting in terrific performances, and that's a bit of my life and how I got to being a playwright, and how I got to make this play, Sisters in Love. Thank you for the time.